Emma Raducanu and Andy Murray managed to score some encouraging victories on the tennis tour this week. The 18-year-old not only won her first match since lifting the US Open title, it was also the first WTA Tour victory of her career, though she was unable to progress to the Transylvania Open semi-final, where her idol Simona Halep lay in waiting for their first-ever clash. Meanwhile, Murray backed his chances of making a breakthrough soon after beating recent foe Hubert Hurkacz in a tricky opening round clash at the Erste Bank Open, with the world number 10 having beaten the Brit twice in the last few weeks. Although Murray got his own revenge, it was 18-year-old Carlos Alcaraz who was victorious in their second-round grudge match, with the Brit having beaten him just weeks ago in Indian Wells. With 4 tournaments being held across the ATP and WTA tours this week, plus a new row over the upcoming Australian Open as Novak Djokovic's chances of competing hang in the balance, Express Sport is taking a look at the biggest headlines in the last week of the tennis world from both on and off the court. Raducanu falls short of dream match. Although she was unable to lift the title this week, or make it to her dream clash against idol Simona Halep in the semi-final, it was still a successful week at the Transylvania Open for Raducanu, who crossed some career firsts off her list. The recent US Open champion started her week in Romania by winning her first-ever match on the WTA Tour against world number 124 Polona Hercog, in what was also the first three-setter of her pro career, and Raducanu followed up her maiden win with a 6-3, 6-4 victory over Anna Bogdan. The 18-year-old then found herself within one match win of a clash with her idol, Halep, a position she was in earlier this month in Indian Wells, but like in the Californian desert, she fell in the match before and was unable to make it to her dream match. Raducanu suffered a one-sided loss to fellow teenager Marta Kostyuk, who needed just 58 minutes beat the US Open champion 6-2, 6-1. It's just disappointing that you have these days. It's not a nice feeling to have. I just need to move on from it, brush it off, and then I'll be back in another tournament soon, she said after the loss, as she prepares to compete in the WTA 250 in Linz on November 6, her last pro tournament of the year. Murray defiant in defeat. Andy Murray got revenge over world number 10 Hubert Hurkacz in Vienna, before Carlos Alcaraz got his own revenge over the Brit in the second round. The former world number 1 faced the pole for the third time in just over 2 months, and beat the fifth seed in Vienna 6-4, 6-7, 6-6, 3, before falling to teenage sensation Alcaraz 6-3, 6-4, having beaten the Spaniard in Indian Wells earlier this month. Although Murray found himself knocked out before the quarter-final for the third tournament in a row, he admitted he thought his breakthrough would be coming, sooner rather than later, and could have the perfect opportunity to prove it at this week's Paris Masters 1000, where he faces qualifier Jenson Brooksby in the first round on Monday, November 1. Following his loss, the 34-year-old said, "I'm not going to keep losing in the second and third round of tournaments. I will get better and I will improve and I will break through in 1 week, or 2 weeks, or a few months." If I continue on that path and build up a little bit more consistency, be that little bit more clinical and a bit more ruthless, I will start winning more and have some deep runs, but it's tough. Djokovic can still face Australian Open ban as row erupts. Will he or won't he? It's been the off-court talk of the tennis world recently, but erupted this past week when Australian government officials found themselves in a row over allowing unvaccinated players to compete in the Australian Open. It had been looking increasingly likely that players would have to prove they were double vaccinated in order to be given visas into Australia to compete in the season-opening Grand Slam, something the nine-time champion has been opposed to as he refuses to disclose his vaccination status and previously cast doubt over his participation if this was required. However, last week Prime Minister Scott Morrison hinted that professional players could be given an exception to the rule, so long as those who weren't vaccinated completed a mandatory 2-week hotel quarantine, but found himself in a war of words with Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews, who confirmed he would not be applying for an exemption for tennis players in the state home to the Australian Open. What I want to make very clear is that the state of Victoria will not be applying for any exemptions for unvaccinated players, Andrews said, per the Australian Associated Press. As Djokovic prepares to play the Paris Masters 1000, he has commented on his participation in the Melbourne Major for what he says is the final time before plans are finalised, saying, "I'm going to decide after I see the official statement from Tennis Australia. Until this, I won't be talking about this anymore. When the official requirements are out, then I'll see what I do with that." Continu3s goes down to the wire, making it to WTA finals. The WTA finals field is finally set, and it came down to the very last match to decide who could nab the last spot. Anett Kontaveit had a tough task in front of her, needing to win the last two tournaments before the WTA finals in order to qualify for the prestigious season-ending event, and managed to book her place in Guadalajara by beating home hero Simona Halep 6-2, 6-3 at the Transylvania Open, 1 week after winning the Kremlin Cup. The win will also earn the Estonian a place in the top 10 for the first time in her career, and the chance to battle it out with the likes of Aryna Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek in Mexico from November 10. Elsewhere, Donna Vekic won her first title since 2017 at the Kumaya Ladies Open, while Alexander Zverev won his fifth title of the season, and 2014 US Open champion Marin Cilic lifted the trophy in St. Petersburg. This week, there's Masters 1000 action for the final time this season in Paris-Bercy, where Djokovic will be competing for the first time since his crushing loss in the US Open final to Daniil Medvedev, who is this week's defending champion. Andy Murray is also back in action and could even face his old rival later in the tournament.